The Nile River, a historical humans production. The Nile River is a north-flowing river originating in Central Africa, flowing north before emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile has historically been considered the longest river in the world. However, research suggests that the Amazon is just ever so slightly longer. However, of the world's major rivers, the Nile still has one of the smallest annual flows of cubic meters of water. The river is a staggering 4,130 miles long, or 6,650 kilometers, flowing from Lake Victoria in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, before flowing through South Sudan, and eventually Egypt before meeting with the Mediterranean at the Egyptian port city of Alexandria. Ancient Egyptian and Sudanese kingdoms grew around the river. Most of the ancient Egyptian sites are located along the river. The importance of the Nile in ancient Egyptian culture cannot be understated. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote, "Egypt was the gift of the Nile." The Nile River was prone to flooding prior to modern dam technology slowing the flow, and would deposit new layers of silt on the floodplains. This led to a very fertile river valley, and the Egyptians took this in stride. They grew wheat, flax, papyrus, along with dozens of other smaller crops along the river. Water buffalo and camels were introduced to the Nile River Valley from Asia and Assyria, respectively, in the 7th century BCE. The water buffalo were domesticated, used for meat and for plowing, while the camels were highly utilized for their carrying capacities. The river and its floods were an important part of Egypt's spirituality. Hapi was the Egyptian god of the floods. Both he and the pharaoh were believed to be able to control the flooding. The Nile was considered to be the main causeway between life and the afterlife. The eastern riverbank was considered to be a place of birth and growth, while the west was considered death. This was further symbolized in the sun god Ra, who underwent birth, death, and resurrection as he crossed the sky each and every day. It was because of this that most Egyptian tombs are placed on the western side of the river. Even the calendar was based around the Nile. Akhet, Peret, and Shamu were the 3 seasons consisting of 4 months of 30 days apiece. Akhet was the time of year when the Nile underwent its flooding. Peret was akin to the growing season, and Shamu was the harvest season. The source of the Nile was the center of intrigue for centuries, as many explorers failed to penetrate deep enough to find the southern headwaters. Records during the time of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, an expedition had traced the Blue Nile and understood that the flooding was caused by rains in the Ethiopian highlands. During a 14th century expedition, when the Pope sent monks to Mongolia, they heard of the source of the Nile in Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia. Jesuit Pedro Paez is credited as being the first European account of the river's headwaters. However, there are other claims, such as those of James Bruce and Paolo Trevigiani. In the modern day, there are a number of disputes ongoing over the ownership and water sharing rights of the Nile. There have been a number of economic plans both drawn up and implemented that would severely reduce the flow of the river, reduce flooding, but also reduce the amount of water that the country of Egypt would receive. They currently have a population of nearly 105 million people, almost all of whom rely on the river for their water. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please share and subscribe.